Oh yeah, sexy biscuits. Nice.
Long boys blues, 1975. A YouTuber is on the rise. Reviewing games late at night and sometimes friends. But Long boys blues, 1975.
Hey YouTube, Longboys Post 1975 and welcome to the random vlog. Apologies there was no random vlog last week. Well, there was a random vlog last week, you didn't get to see it. I shot it once, brought it to my computer, and you know when you get that annoying thing when the card can be read on your camera but can't be read on your computer regardless of what recovery stuff you do? Had that problem. Formatted the card, shot it again. Hate shooting vlogs twice because I feel you lose the sort of off the cuff sort of nature of the way, well, maybe you disagree. Maybe a more scripted video would be more coherent, but the way I talk. And it did the exact same thing. So this is a new SD card. Whether it happens or not, I honestly don't know. But to be fair, if it does, you won't see this. What do I want to talk about this week? It's more of a rhetorical question, but do people even lend games to each other anymore? This is kind of inspired by, I've seen a bunch of North American YouTubers talking about the fact that Walmart is essentially phasing out physical media, and this is a very, very sad thing. Physical media always will have a place for me. I know I own an Xbox Series S, but ultimately I couldn't get a Series X at the time, and also I don't care what anyone says, we lost the fight against digital only in the 8th generation. At best, we were just going to stall it. It's on the cards, it's going to happen. We're essentially pretty much there anyway when it comes to disc-based games. But I'll touch upon all of this when I talk about do people even sort of lend games to each other anymore. And pretty much the answer to that, at least for me, would be no. I can tell you that right now at the start of the video. Now you could all bugger off and watch something far more interesting. But the thing is, and I saw a bunch of people saying, we're lucky we're not at that state yet in the United Kingdom. We may not be at that immediate state yet, but we certainly are on the way to it, because you've only got to look at the DVD and computer game section in most modern supermarkets now. I'm talking about Morrison's, Tesco's, Asda, Sainsbury's, compared to what it was 10 years ago, because I used to be able to walk into particularly the local Sainsbury's down the road from the City Ground, which obviously is a Bristol Rovers fan. I never go anywhere near. Don't need to anymore now, because they used to have an absolutely fantastic DVD section and video game section. Their video game section was one wall in itself, and then on the other side, and they sold consoles. I'm pretty sure I've not walked into a supermarket in years where you can actually physically buy a games console. But yeah, and on the other side of the wall, opposite it, there was huge DVDs. There was a chart section, then there was a chart section for Blu-ray, and then there was an entire, and this is the bit I missed the most, box sets, situation? Selection, box set selection. I used to buy some absolute banging box sets, you know, even stuff I didn't even know I wanted until I saw it, because they had the best box set selection in my local area. Stuff like Allo Allo. I know, I'm a fan of Allo Allo. And now if you go into a supermarket, you're lucky if they have literally one shelf space like this. But that's irrelevant. The point is, you know, they don't want to stock physical media anymore. Games companies haven't wanted you to buy physical media for years. They don't want you lending it to your mates. Well, I would argue the point of this video is you can't really viably do that anymore, because they want you all to buy your own copy. That's why they don't like second-hand sales. That's why EA and Activision tried very hard years and years and years ago, probably about 10 years ago, to try and get rid of second-hand game sales, or you had to force it out on its way. You had to buy, you know, an extra additional online code once you already purchased the game, because it was secondhand, and they didn't like that. They don't like secondhand games. They don't like you lending games. They want you to buy your own game. That's why they want this digital only future. Problem with that is not everyone has bulletproof internet. I have pretty fantastic internet actually compared to what it was about 10 years ago, but let me put this into perspective for you, which is streaming and stuff like that. My internet's absolutely fantastic and Jim Dandy. Now, because of the size of games, I downloaded Forza is how you're supposed to say it, but bollocks to it. I see no T. Forza Motorsport, well, what is it? 8, but we're doing that whole stupid thing that they started with movies when we've gone back to the original name, and it took me 8 hours, and then 3 days later I turned it on and I had to download an 8 GB patch. Yeah, downloaded Metal Gear Solid last night. The only game I want off the collection, which is, even though I own it on PlayStation and the GameCube version, was the original Metal Gear Solid. So I downloaded that. That wasn't too bad. That was about, I don't know, half an hour. Only 2.8. Actually, how do you make that game 2.8 gigs? Anyway, spoiler alert, it's rubbish. Stick to your PlayStation version. They've ruined that. They've absolutely ballsed it up. But the point is, you know, they all want us to, be in this. I am waffling off tangent. I am aware of that, but it's me. Come on, you expected that, didn't you? Tuning into this vlog. Not everyone has bulletproof internet, so, and like I said, mine is pretty jim dandy. But 8 hours. Granted, it's like is it 130, maybe 140 gigs? I don't know. It's something absolutely huge, and this is another problem with why, back on tangent, why we can't lend games to people anymore. But the point is, as a kid, lending games to people, as far back as the ZX Spectrum, was just one of those great social moments of school. It was fantastic. Swapping a game on the bus, going to school, waiting to see your mate who was in a different form. That excruciating wait, nerve, because no one had mobile phones. Will he or won't he or she have it? Because, you just didn't know. You arranged it the day before, or maybe a week before, and you needed it in your life, and then you would get it. And obviously you could pirate, allegedly, on the ZX Spectrum. So, I mean, swapping games back then was just essentially, expanding your catalogue. You knew that you were going to copy, your mate knew you were going to copy his game, and he knew you were going to copy your game, and stuff. Got that the wrong way around. But yeah, but it was still fantastic, and it's a highlight of some of my memories at both primary school and secondary school. Then obviously a master system, so games are getting expensive at this point. 19 quid, 24 quid, 30 quid. Borrowing mates off your game. Borrowing mates off your game was an absolute bloody godsend, and again a highlight of school. I think I only knew 2 people who owned a master system, and I was the only person who owned a Mega Drive for ages. But you know that. A game with the Mega Drive, a game again with the SNES. It was so pricey for these things. We think games are expensive now, to be fair. £69 for a digital only download. Knock a fiver off because I don't have a box or a disc. I mean, seriously, how can you charge the same? But again, you're saying, well, that's your fault for buying, an Xbox Series S. And I'm saying again, we lost that war in the previous generation. But the point is, these are all amazing, amazing things. And the fact that kids, because I'm not talking about us, because I mean, if you've got disposable cash as an adult, I'm pretty sure you don't even bother borrowing games off people. You just, because you know the size of the install, and then you know if it's good because of how it's reviewed on YouTube or stuff like that by people you trust, not the IGNs and shit like that. Then you just bite the bullet and buy it, because you know that the fact that, and another thing about, tying into this whole, this is your fault for buying a digital only console. Do you think a disc these days is anything more than an actual CD key? Because that's all it is. That's basically what it is. I remember when I was installing Resident Evil 2 on my Xbox One, and the Call of Duties, and the actual initial download, the actual initial install of the disc was boom, gone. Like, wow, that's quick. Oh, here we go. So yeah, the fact that we're in this environment now and have been there obviously for about 10 years, but it was never as bad on the 7th generation, because you could still play your games off the disc, but you don't have to release a finished game, which is shocking, because in any other aspect of something where you buy it, if you didn't have to buy a finished product, they wouldn't allow it. It's like flogging you a fucking car, and you got to wait a fortnight for your headlights work and shit like that. But the fact is that they don't release finished games. Your day one patches are absolutely fucking huge again, which means that your disc is pointless. It's a CD key. All stuff like this, is essentially, it just means that you can't borrow games, and that's very sad. They're very sad, and I think kids these days, if they can afford these systems, well, they probably can, because they're probably all spoiled brats and didn't have good work ethic like we all did, Generation X, when we were kids. They really are missing out on something. But then I don't know what school is like now, because for me, the whole computer aspect of it back in the day was just, it was brilliant. It was fantastic. Like these unique mini little clubs, each faction, if you will. And then even if you couldn't borrow games with someone else, you would still talk to them and sitting around Meme Machines and the Complete Guide to Console books and stuff like that. It was fantastic. Do kids do this anymore? Don't know. Obviously, we didn't have mobile phones. But the point is, to me, lending a game to someone and borrowing a game was just part and parcel, part of my childhood. And if you can't do that anymore, and I know that there'll probably be people saying, well, I do, because I'm the only person in the entire fucking country with, ninja speed internet. But obviously there'll always be rules for the exception. But for the majority of us, it's just not a practical thing. It really isn't a practical thing. Then obviously you add into that game, I was going to say game facts, add into that Game Pass, which again, I guess that's the shift consoles, isn't it? Makes it irrelevant. And I know people are going to say, you said we lost the battle, like digital versus disc only, and obviously people didn't lend on the 8th generation. I never borrowed a single game off anyone on the 8th generation. The last generation I borrowed a game off someone on was the 7th generation, where you could still play them off disc. Borrowed loads off my mates, because most of my mates had 360s. But I know there'll be someone who say, well, hang on a minute, do you remember Sony's brilliant ad for how you borrow a game on the PlayStation 4 after, Microsoft's botched, Xbox One launch, when they were saying, like, you can only borrow a game, or lend a game this many times before someone has to pay a charge. And then Sony said, here's how, lending a game to someone works on the PlayStation 4. And then he just passes it to his mate. You think they actually wanted to do that? You think they actually meant that? They think that they wanted you to borrow games off your mates? Of course they didn't. That was simply, they saw a fucking amazing opportunity to take a swipe at the opposition, who, well, quite frankly, their launch was so cack-handed, handed it to them on a plate. But anyway, I'm getting off topic again, but of course it's me. In case you see me rub my legs and stuff like that, we've got a puppy and she's got teeth like fucking razors, and the marks up my arms because she's a chewer, and my legs, yeah, forgot, I haven't had a puppy in 30 years. Quite painful. Shut up now, get back to topic. So the point is, size of games, you would have said, would have thought because of the cost of games that you would lend, but you don't, because the size of games just makes it completely and utterly irrelevant. But the point is, what a sad place we are in right now. One of the greatest, most social aspects outside of playing a game with your friends on a couch, not talking about the internet here, because don't get me started on how internet gaming ruined fucking another social aspect. Looking at you, Call of Duty lobbies. Yeah, and it ruined another great social aspect of gaming. But yeah, not being able to borrow a game, or basically, let's be honest, they forced it this way. Removing the aspect of the ability to lend games to people just means another great social aspect of gaming has been removed, in the great streamlining process of what all these companies want, where we end up at digital only, which you could argue, again, I have a Series S, pretty much we are there with, because of the way the games are released unfinished, and the fact that fuck all of it is on the actual disc. This kind of got away from me, but yeah, rhetorical question. Does anyone even lend games to people anymore? Is this still a thing? I don't think it is. By all means, prove me wrong. That's why I'm asking this question. But also, I think it's a very, very sad thing. And so the last time you could properly lend games to people, on modern consoles was PlayStation 3 and obviously Xbox 360. But obviously all before that, fantastic. Even though both my PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 were chipped, still borrow games off people, all the time and shit like that. Even borrowed games off people. Actually, 7th generation did borrow games off people on my Wii until it got chipped, and then could buy pirate games, allegedly. Anyway, as always, I'd love to know what you think. Do you still borrow games off your mates? And I'm talking about the current generation, because obviously you can for previous generations. And do you agree that it's kind of a sad thing that it's gone away? Or I'm just completely utterly wrong and talking bollocks, which, to be fair, could be quids in. Anyways, always, I'd love to know what you think. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you later.